Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is with reference to the very important story about fake news that is, of course, extremely vital to not just the case with reference to the Punjab College, in which allegedly a female student was raped by a security guard. That turns out to be fake news. And this is what, of course, the reports that have been coming in keep on saying. There is, of course, a lack of evidence. Statements have been coming in from the girl's family, from the hospital, from the schools, and other places, which back the fact that there might not be any such incident that has taken place, and the fact that there is no real evidence that has come forward so far. Unfortunately, what this has done is that it has resulted in countrywide protests. Earlier, there was a spread of this video and misinformation on social media accounts, and because of that, a lot of the students involved in the protests as the aftermath of the reports of such incidents also got injured. Many were arrested. Some also, unfortunately, lost their lives, including reports coming in of a security guard being targeted. However, whatever is the aspect in terms of what happened, we need to figure out what really is the case here. How did it spread so quickly, and why wasn't there any control? And then what really needs to be done in terms of social media and the spread of fake news, and how to curtail it and protect the real victims of the society who go through incidents of rape and other abuse. And this is important, particularly, of course, for students and the young population of Pakistan, and to understand how to cater to this issue. So we'll be taking a closer look and focus on this matter and trying to understand what this means, and particularly what are the legal nuances when it comes to such cases, and of course the way that different hearings are also continuing. Our next segment is going to be taking a look at the very important BRICS summit, which of course Russia is hosting in Kazan, and this is a conference and a platform of about 20 leaders from emerging economies. And as part of this platform, it's very important to understand what sort of a role Russia will be playing in the geopolitics of the world, and what exactly is the message that it's bringing. Of course, it's coming after the SEO summit as well, where we talked about regional peace and security and collaboration, and the fact that the region also is trying to move away, particularly those countries, including Russia, that have a lot of sanctions placed on them, is trying to move away from moving forward in an economy that is not dependent on dollars, and so to have a different alternative setup where the region engages with each other's economies to mitigate the influence of these sanctions. And BRICS might just be another platform for Russia to actually put that forward and try to see how exactly it can be done. There are, of course, criticisms and concerns coming from different areas, including from the West, that don't really look at the BRICS as a serious threat, or the fact that it will be able to achieve something together on this multilateral platform due to many bilateral differences with countries including China and India. So we're going to be understanding what this means, particularly in terms of the hosting of this summit and the message that it puts across, and then of course the way that it can possibly help the economies of countries such as Russia, and whether or not an alternative system can actually be developed, and will the countries involved as part of the BRICS will be interested in engaging that, and then of course also how that can actually then spread to Pakistan as well, and the involvement that we can play in the larger context as an important regional player. That is going to be our focus in the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Faisal. We've been joined online by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi, and we've also been joined online by Barrister Safi Ullah Ghauri, who's a legal expert and political expert as well. Thank you very much, Barrister Safi, for joining us and being part of the discussion today. And I'm going to start with you with reference to what has been going on. And while, of course, this is extremely important and tragic, it is also very, very sensitive in terms of protecting the real victims and society, and then also, of course, not allowing fake news to spread. But I want first your take and perspective on where exactly the matter went wrong, and what exactly are the courts really looking at now. We'll talk about, of course, what else can be done and what sort of positions different institutions of the country need to take. But I want your perspective in terms of analyzing the incident and how we've reached this point.
Right, thank you very much, Sana. So, Sana, from my perspective, and this is obviously just my personal opinion, I feel that the reason why this became the kind of news that it became is because of international geopolitics, and this is so to a degree because of the general fake news that we have within our country. Now, let's be clear. Fake news is not new in Pakistan. We encounter that on a daily basis on all sorts of different crimes. Fake news of abductions have taken place. Fake news of murders have taken place. I remember there was once news that Malala Yousafzai has been murdered in Pakistan. Even that went viral. Things happen, and even fake news of rapes have taken place. In fact, we have a recent incident in Islamabad where a woman alleged that she had been raped, and turned out to be the whole thing spread to a very small degree within Islamabad, and it was then eventually curtailed. People found out that it was fake. This is unfortunate, but also it is something that happens in every society. Fake allegations and fake news tend to spread. But in Pakistan, and this particular incident for me is a little different, because we all saw what happened as a result of this. As a result of this, the students were rightfully harrowed, and they were frightened, and there was a lot of spread of this misinformation, and everybody came out on the streets at a time when the government was bent upon keeping everybody in their houses. Why? Because we were hosting the SCO summit. It was very, very clear. Now, when the SCO summit was taking place, there were terrorist activities that were going to take place within Pakistan. Many of them were foiled successfully by the law enforcement agencies. We know that even right before the SCO moved, massive anti-terrorist operation took place. Many terrorists were caught. Many weapons were apprehended. So that was successful. Then PTI wanted to come and have a dharna in D Chowk. You are well aware of that. That was somehow stopped from happening. And when the politicians and the terrorists were stopped from doing what they could, then this human rights incident took place. And the way it spread, now this is what's very important. What I want to really talk about here is, incidents take place all the time, but why is it that this one particular incident managed to catch fire unlike any other? And that has everything to do with social media algorithms. That has everything to do with the funding that a particular post gets. So we have ample evidence to show that the people who were posting all of this, the news that was coming out was all fake. It's all been, I think, debunked now. Everybody, it's not just Punjab police saying it anymore. Independent journalists have also done their investigations and found out that there was, in fact, all of these profiles that were alleging that they were witnesses to such an incident were also fake profiles. And that's just really sad. But the question really comes down to, Sana, why would somebody do this? What do they stand to benefit from doing something of this sort? When the Portsmouth murders took place in the UK, a person sitting in Muzangchungi, Lahore, was there posting that it was a Muslim who was behind it, and therefore anti-Muslim sentiment spread all across the UK, and 3 Muslims died as a result. So my question then is, who was it here who was funding it? Now we know that foreign funding is coming. We know that there are countries around us and maybe further away from us who have a vested interest in ensuring that Pakistan looks like a weak, looks like an insignificant country. And I want to just take a moment here to say something that I find to be very disturbing. I'm in Brazil, Sao Paulo right now. When I roam around on the streets here and I meet the local Brazilians, they all seem to say the same things that Pakistanis say about Pakistan. They all seem to say, oh, our economy is failing. Oh, look at us. We have so many human rights abuses. Oh, look at us. We're sinking. It's not. They give you this impression of hopelessness, very similar to what a large chunk of Pakistanis would want to give you. And this has made me realize that this is a concentrated effort across the global south to make countries that are like Brazil, like Russia, like China, like Pakistan, like India, or to make all of these countries feel that they are inferior. And we have now internalized this inferiority by consistently parroting the same kind of Western narratives that have been going around. And it just goes on to show that we have a basic weakness of our media. So despite the fact that there are laws in place against such false news, the problem is a little deeper. It is a psychological problem amongst the Pakistanis who pounce at the opportunity of believing anything that is said against them and do not want to believe anything that goes in their favor. So once again, here the SCO conference for me was, in my opinion, a big deal, right? This is the biggest conference Pakistan has hosted since the 1990s, since the Islamic conference. Since then, this is a huge deal that so many world leaders have shown their trust in Pakistan and have come to Pakistan. But instead, what took the news? What took the center place? The Lahore rape incident, which also was later fake. And to what end? To the fact that all these world leaders are visiting Pakistan. 900 media personnel were in Pakistan. International media personnel were in Pakistan. And what do you want to show to them? That women are not safe here. That they're getting raped left, right, and center, even if they go to school. So this is what it is. I genuinely feel that this is a part of an international conspiracy, and I see this not just for Pakistan. I see this for many other countries. And I mean, I think on the later segment you'll be talking about BRICS, but I do see why countries are getting sick of this behavior by the West, and they want to now move away from this gaslighting and create their own narratives now for the first time as well.
Right, absolutely, and that's an important aspect, and we'll of course touch upon that later as well. But Farrukh, I want your perspective on this too, particularly with regards to the timing of when it happened, and also in terms of the interest that it serves, and how exactly do we deal with this? Because while of course we can take a look at this particular incident, we can have hearings, we can have petitions, we can have proceedings on the media talking about how this was spread and how this was fake news and how people need to be aware and whatnot. But in practicality, we see that these things do happen and that people do believe things that they see, and then we've seen how quickly it spread, and how vulnerable our young population is when it comes to these issues, and how difficult it will be for people to actually raise their voices and be believed. And so it's important, of course, to understand all of these aspects and then deal with this issue. But I want your perspective in terms of what really then can or could have the students done, or the people looking at these issues and these stories have done, who are at the receiving end as well. There is, of course, a lot that the institutions need to do, but what about the people who are getting these news? What do they do about it?
All right, Sana, thank you very much for the question. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to actually answer your question, and it is very important because there are concerns that need to be met in this society, right? But I wanted to actually look at the bigger picture as well. I'm going to discuss more or less the same facts that Barrister Safi was actually discussing, but my take will be slightly different. But let us first of all get 2 or 3 uncomfortable truths out of the way. One, the number or incident of rapes in this country is woefully high. And that is a sad commentary on the way we are evolving as a society. Of course, you can say, I could, indulge in whataboutery and say that India also has this or Afghanistan also has this. Of course, but we have to take responsibility of the country that we live in. The second thing, and second uncomfortable truth is that, of course, if there is a powerful person involved in any kind of incident, there's always possibility of a chilling effect in reporting and how these things disappear from the law books, right? Having said that, usually what happens whenever you talk about rape incidents, there usually is a victim and there's always some forensic evidence that is left behind, which can be brought together and presented in a court of law. Unfortunately, in these recent episodes, we haven't seen any complainant, any person who is actually relevant to anything that was actually happening. We saw certain claimants coming forward, allegedly saying that they are relatives. In the end, they turned out to be actors or something else. That is, again, sad commentary. Now, the question arises, if there wasn't an incident in this case, what was it that was triggering this kind of reaction? So usually what happens is that cause and effect follow a pattern, right? First you have cause, then you have an effect. First there's a rape or murder or whatever have you, and then the news spreads, and then there's a reaction. But as Barrister Safi was mentioning UK's example, their reactionaries were already out and they were ready for disinformation, and then boom, the disinformation also arrived. So similarly, when you look at our situation, it seems that the reaction was already brewing or waiting to happen. Now, why would that be? If you look at certain political changes in the region, you will remember the case of Bangladesh, where student leaders actually came out and they started protesting, and finally they overthrew the government. If you look at the people who were actually out and trying to agitate, they had similar kind of situation in mind. So could there be any kind of attempt to create a rumor or disinformation which was weaponized with a view to actually bring about that kind of change? I have to remind you also that when Sri Lanka were defaulted, there were attempts to default Pakistan as well. There were political parties which were actively trying to ensure that the country does not actually pass the test of IMF. And after that, of course, whatever happened, we saw that. But with that kind of a situation in mind, now we keep on moving back in time, and let us look at another episode, that is 2014's Dharna, or sit-in for that matter. I remember those days when an SSP was actually beaten by the protesters who were sitting there. And at that time, rumors spread that there has been a police action and many bodies have fallen. Immediately, what we did was that because we were told that there are, bodies in PIMS or polyclinic, immediately we rushed to those places to check the morgues or other places. There wasn't anyone. So the question then becomes, I of course understand the virality, natural virality of the social media. Sometimes algorithms also decide, but there is also a way to manipulate the algorithms. So the question then is, why would that be happening? Did it have anything to do with SEO or anything else? My humble submission is that there was another very big rumor that spread the day PTI's people actually came to Islamabad, and that was about its founder, having died or something. At that time, many of the party supporters started peddling that fake news, and certain media, big wigs also actually stepped in. So the question then becomes, is there a possibility that there are forces which are manipulating information space in such a way to actually keep on stirring the pot or keep on boiling the pot? And with that kind of situation in mind, I'm not worried that there are political parties which would like to actually overthrow the system and install themselves into power, because either they fail or they succeed, but things settle in one direction. What worries me is that there has been, for past 4 or 5 years, a consistent effort to create a stalemate, which creates a gridlock that makes the job of governance totally impossible, exactly when the entire region is full of opportunities and exploring opportunities. So that is my concern. Whether it had anything to do with SEO or not, I don't know. But PTI came at the time when there was election in Haryana. And similarly, when May 9th happened, there was an election in Karnataka. So we have to look at all these big issues, and then we have to go for the forensic analysis of all these rumors and disinformation to understand what exactly is brewing in the country, and whether the country's enemies have the kind of control that we fear. Finally, regarding these negative campaigns, of course, they are going to have a negative impact on reporting of rape cases also, because then remember that there is already a stigma attached to this, and even legitimate cases think that there is going to be some kind of controversy, and perhaps we are also going to be disregarded. So they would actually not go or report for that matter. And finally, of course, the question of policing is important. In many places, we saw that policing lacks in relevance. Why would that be? Why is it that the police is there? It is trying, people get injured also, especially policemen, but they don't have the kind of gear that is needed to ensure that if there is a riot, they can be controlled. Yes, Anna.
That's a very valid point in terms of police having relevance, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Faisal, before that, I want your take on the issue, particularly in terms of what Farrukh mentioned. He talked about another fake news that was spread around the same time with, of course, the PTI founder being killed or murdered. And there's also, of course, similar stories in the past that we've seen that Barrister Safi was also pointing at. So I want to understand then that while those news seem to have a lot of sources or a lot of people who are quick to debunk it, who are quick to come forward and talk about how this isn't okay or this isn't true, or and it doesn't spread to a level, and it didn't even this time around. The issue of a girl, of a female child, a student being raped is a very sensitive case. And I understand that the public absorption or the way that the public actually understood that or took that in was different. But why weren't people coming forward to debunk that, especially when we talk about the institutions or the law enforcement agencies, talking about at least making sure that they've checked on the victim or making sure that they've actually covered the basics? Because for now, of course, there's no evidence on the victim existing even. Wasn't that something that could have been found out very quickly?
Yes, Sana, this is a very cruel side of it. When we talk about our social mediums, if you come up with the truth and with the evidences, that might not get any attention. But of course, when we talk about the fake news, especially the news that is related to chaos, it gets an eye. And more it gets an eye, as Farrukh has rightly pointed out, that the algorithms get set, and whoever sets these algorithms.
Were there news debunking it?
No, there were people who were actually debunking
initially,
it.
right?
Yeah, initially people were debunking it, but of course their narratives, they did not catch any eyes. Reason being, I mean, we are sort of overall the older societies, they want to actually go through that kind of story that has an attraction. And even, I mean, it takes me back to my days when I was working with the newspaper. I remember the most important stories that revolve around the masses, they were on the front page. But the stories that might not be affecting masses, but they were very interesting in nature, they were right in the middle somewhere, a very small story, and the page would be full of that kind of stories. But now in this context, I mean, on social media, them little stories that may be interesting, but it has the source is missing or something like that is missing, that kind of story, I mean, gets viral quickly. Reason being, I mean, normally we consider Facebook and Twitter to be the mediums where everything is being posted, X, Twitter. But if we talk about the younger generations, I mean, Generation Z, the one we call, they are more into TikTok, they are more into Instagrams and all of these forums where they require a sort of a screen, and that's it. They are putting through, and they're simply saying something.
But that's not limited to Gen Z, Faisal. I mean, we have some of the biggest leaders on these platforms.
I'm just because these kind of forums, they are very sophisticated forums, and that's why I mean, if somebody asks me how to put a video on TikTok, believe me, I don't know. I don't know how to put a video on there. And what I was trying to say is, you know, when we as a journalist, we work, though there are certain stories in which we simply say, my source is telling me this. But in that context, still we have a source. But just to protect the identity of that source, we know the story is right, and we put that through. But in this case, whatever you want to post on social media, you can simply generate, the way Barrister Safi earlier highlighted the story related to Britain. I mean, yes, people were already hate-filled, yes, people were already sitting around, ducking down, just waiting for this kind of story so that they can, of course, create havoc out there. But the person who created this kind of story, he twisted that story. He saw that there was this incident, and he simply twisted it that this, Afro-Caribbean guy is actually a Muslim and a migrant as well. So these two issues, Islamophobia and anti-migration narrative, sells in the West, especially in UK, and that's what clicked. And it went viral without knowing, without confirming the sort of authenticity of that news. I mean, it went viral. By the time they figured out that it was a fake story, I mean, havoc was already created. The man, the guy who was being mentioned in that news, he's someone who actually was raised, born in Britain, and was actually part of one of the ads as well. He was an actor, or he was, you can say that he, as a child, he was a model who modeled in one of the ads. And this is the veracity which we are seeing from the social media. Anyone can put fake news. It can be generated into the supreme in terms of hashtag it is using, and that hashtag gets circulated, and that hashtag gets clicks more and more. And yes, Farrukh was already right about it. Whoever sets these algorithms, I mean, this is where the problem lies. With what intentions them people are setting these algorithms, that's where the actual problem is, and that's need to be, of course, probed, whether there is intentionally someone doing it, especially at a time when Pakistan was holding one of the most, I mean, in this month there were two most important events. Number one, SCO, and number two, BRICS. Whole world is looking at them, and both of them, it's like half of the world is involved. Half of the world was involved in SCO, and now half of the world is involved in the BRICS. So both of these events, they are so important, and this taking place when Pakistan is holding SCO, and this kind of social media havoc is being created, and on ground situation is worst and bad. That actually means a lot. And it means that there are people, there are forces behind the curtains who want the society to be disturbed, and the way it was portrayed, and then the whole youth was seemingly involved in it without trying to figure out whether it is reality based news or is just the fake news. And I believe, I mean, we should be extra cautious about this. That is why I endorse when, of course, the point of, firewall is highlighted. It is need of the hour. It is need of the hour. Plus, we should have a cyber force on sides as well.
But will that fix the problem, Faisal?
It will. It will. Why? Because if you have the cyber force that actually keeps on monitoring all of the social mediums, and wherever they see this kind of thing taking place, that should be busted there and then.
Let me
one more thing I just wanted to add. Remember when we were kids, we used to always hear this story in which
talk about yourself, Faisal.
Yeah, in which we always used to hear this story and read this story that there was this kid who was in the jungle, and he suddenly started shouting, "Oh, there's wolf, wolf, wolf," and everyone from the village gathered there, and there was no wolf. Second time he did it, there was no wolf. Third time, actually there was wolf, but of course people didn't go because they thought that it's wrong. These sort of cases, they are of utmost importance when it comes to society, especially a rape involved. Next time around, when there is a rape, God forbid there is a rape, what if people say, "Oh, it must be one of the fake stories"?
Absolutely.
So these are the filths that are actually...
Unfortunately, Faisal, the statistics point towards many rape incidents already having happened since this news has actually has been put forward. But Barrister Safi, yes, Farrukh, you're raising your hand. So very quickly before I go to Barrister Safi. Yes.
Yeah, I'm raising my hand because I thought that there was need for some kind of correction. And I'm sure that perhaps either I was a little bit boring and Faisal zoned out, or perhaps I wasn't that articulate in actually bringing up my point. I wasn't actually talking about algorithm per se. It was Barrister Safi's point. I was saying that algorithms can be manipulated by actual brute force, right? A lot of people can sit and they can change how algorithm reacts, because it is a program that is being fed and updated by the input that we actually put there. And there's one argument that I wanted to make. We keep on actually putting the cart before the horse. I understand that the fake news is a big issue, but my concern is that why do we see people who are already ready to go out and start protesting at a second's notice, right? So perhaps there is a possibility that something else is also going on. There are people who are being paid or being encouraged to go out and protest and burn everything down, and then just for the sake of
The students
creating
actually
a
stepping
cause,
out?
they are used eventually.
Farrukh, do you
Yeah,
think that was
Sana?
also true with regards to the students stepping out, that they were paid?
Frankly, not every student will be paid, right? But the point is that usually what happens is that wolf pack actually manages with alphas, and there seems to be some kind of dynamic that even if you include a few people who are actually dynamic and who might be compromised, they can really wreak havoc. We saw that on May 9th. We saw it in many other episodes. So I want to actually have a forensic analysis, but I wanted to highlight two aspects. One, the trust between the state and the people. It has to improve. And secondly, if you are going to police the social media, then improve the quality of policing on ground as well, because otherwise there might be people or agents perhaps who are being paid to manipulate things.
Right. Okay. And Barrister Safi, I'd like your perspective in as well, and you can comment on the discussion, but I'd like two aspects for you to definitely take note of. One, with reference to what Faisal pointed out in terms of the firewall and whether or not that's actually in any way a good move forward. And second, in terms of the legal nuances of cases where there is fake news involved. And of course, we talked about what happened in the UK, and there was a lot of focus on where did this story actually originated from. And I understand there were two countries involved in that, but I want your take in terms of whether or not that's important to every issue when we talk about the spread of fake news, and where do we draw that line then from what was originated to then what was spread, and who was doing it knowingly and who wasn't.
Right. Thank you very much, Sana. So let's just go one step at a time. As the first question is that of a firewall, and I am 100% in the favor of a firewall. In fact, I don't even understand why it is a contentious topic and why people believe that we should not have a firewall. I don't, in fact, understand any argument to the contrary, and I'll justify myself by saying that every other country also has a firewall. It's just that for them, because of the fact that they have controlled fake news, it is not an issue. Australia has a firewall, the UK has a firewall, the US has a firewall. Once again, I'm here in Brazil right now. They've put on their firewall. You can't use Twitter. And a lot of countries do that. China has a firewall. All of the Middle East has a firewall. These countries that we look up to in terms of them being economic powers, all of them have firewalls. Maybe they do use the word firewall. Some of them use the word kill switch. In fact, in Australia, the word is very clearly kill switch, and there's an act for the kill switch, which was passed by the parliament. That's how popular it was, that everybody voted for it. So why is it that when it comes to Pakistan, it always becomes such an issue? And also, sorry, before I proceed any further, our neighbor India also has a firewall. They also manage what kind of content comes in and out of India. It's not like they're a complete playing field for anyone. So the firewall should definitely be there. The very fact that the firewall has been made contentious is once again because of this fake news, because there are forces out there who are scared that they will no longer be able to wreak havoc the way they are wreaking havoc. So they want some sort of uprising once again against this topic, as they want on almost every other topic that there is. Now, when it comes to the legal question, you asked me if there are any legal nuances regarding fake news, and yes, we have the Pakistan Electronic Crimes Act, which is very clear, and it deals with it in terms of Section 24, in which dissemination of false information has been penalized. Apart from that, there's also Pakistan Penal Code. Even if we were not to look at things from a social media perspective, even if we were to look at traditional media, Section 505.
But Barrister Safi, my question particularly was with reference to how do you differentiate between where the story actually originated from and then who actually spread it intentionally and who did not, and how is that actually figured out? And what's more important on that front? Yes, go ahead.
All three of you are in fact better positioned to answer this question than I am, because it comes down to the way journalists are trained. I think, from what I understand, there are rules and regulations, and there are ways news needs to be verified. Now, all of you are journalists. Once again, I'm not. So you would know what the code of ethics are. There's a code of conduct by the Newspaper Association of Pakistan, by Pembra. But all of these.
But Barrister Safi, my question again is where does the accountability end? In terms of the spread of fake news. There were so many people, for example, involved in the spread of this news. Many did not know it was fake news, for example. How will the accountability then be established?
Yes, I think that's a great question. And honestly, the way it would happen is, this is a process of evolution. So they would probably start out, they would catch a lot of people. Some people who did so unknowingly, some people who did so knowingly. There would be a lot of innocents who would get caught in the process as well. But there should be some sort of a punishment. These people should not get bails immediately. There should be some punishment. So, and that should then be the news that should be disseminated. Everybody should know that if you spread fake news, even if you share fake news unknowingly, you could then get caught into the process of cutting beheadings, so to speak. So do not participate in these kind of violent anti-state activities. With the passage of time, people will learn. But initially, of course, this is a process of evolution. We do not have good forensic teams. We do not have, our cybercrime wing at the FIA is absolutely terrible. I have worked there. And I can tell you right now, Sana, you will be shocked to believe that when people are sharing things online, they do not have computers. These poor souls, what they do is they have these big files with printouts of Facebook and Twitter retweets. They don't even have like an Excel sheet where all of these things can be recorded. So I don't have any hopes from the FIS cybercrime wing, let's be honest. But what we would want is for the courts to at least.
But Barrister Safi,
yes, sorry.
The question at this moment is of intentions. For example, earlier Sana was saying that whether the students were paid or not. Similarly, when you talk about social media users, how will you tell which person was doing it with a malified intent and who was actually doing it for legitimate causes?
See, this is one of the things that this is in fact my field of expertise. I have been called in the past by the Prime Minister's office to discuss when the audio leaks took place and they wanted payments in Bitcoin. So I was called in and I was asked to advise them. There is nothing that Pakistan can do because we do not have the technological wherewithal to figure out. Let's say you're talking about funding. Yes, fundings are taking place, but do we know how the funding mechanisms work? No, we do not. We are way behind in such things. So yes, it is very possible that people got funds abroad, people got funds in cryptocurrencies, people got funds somehow or the other. But for our law enforcement agencies, it is practically impossible to detect what they are. So we'll have to presume here to a degree that there was some negative intent, and from there moving forward we'll have to conduct thorough investigations, trying to go deeper and deeper into these matters, and at the very least criminalize some of the people who were at the forefront. So let's say everybody was retweeting it. Well, maybe there was somebody who was retweeting it every 5 minutes, then somebody who was sharing it to all other people. There are always these central nodes. When you talk about the network effect, there are always some people who are more active, like you said, the alphas, so to speak. So we have to get to those alphas, arrest one or two of them, and make news out of that. Until and unless.
Absolutely. Let me just thank Barrister Safi because we're out of time.
I just wanted to say something related to Barrister Safi, what Barrister Safi said. It's can't we just come up with a counter to all of this menace in terms of incentives for those who are the whistleblowers? Because if somebody sitting in the society is doing it, somewhere down the line he would be having someone around him who can whistleblow about him and who can give the facts as well, and fact finder and the whistleblowers, they can be given an incentive for doing so that the money issue can be.
But doesn't that open a Pandora's box of a whole lot of other problems?
It can, but if we have incentives for people who can whistleblow about a criminal, We know that if criminal is missing, then there are posters about
All
criminal.
right, Barrister Safi, very
there will be a
quickly, 10
reward.
seconds. I'm very short on time, but if you can quickly address that.
So it's a beautiful idea. It's a fantastic idea that has been implemented by Pakistan in the past, particularly in the fields of tax. If you whistleblow on somebody who's doing tax evasion, then you get a percentage of that money. This has been successfully practiced, but also unsuccessful because Pakistan has many, many mafias. Unfortunately, the identities of these people are not always protected, and a lot of whistleblowers in the past have been killed, abducted. They have gone through tremendous problems. Not many whistleblowers have been unable to make it to the courts. So because of our checkered history of justice and because of the lack of protection that we give to such people, it's becoming increasingly difficult for people to join in. But great thought.
Thank you very much, Barrister Safi, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And Faisal, I need to give you a new dictionary and a new definition for one-liners. But Farrukh, very quickly for the second segment, because we're short on time, I want your take on the BRICS summit and what does Russia hope to achieve of it, and especially coming off after the SCO and the fact that we're looking at this regional development, particularly in terms of economy and as an alternative to dependency on dollars. What do you think will be the significance of this particular summit this year, whether or not that possibility actually exists, given the fact that many countries bilaterally don't get along very well?
Right, Sarah, thank you very much. I think that like SCO, when you talk about BRICS, that also is full of potential, especially when you talk about actually bringing people out of poverty, right? Their cooperation is always great and it is good. But when you talk about this event that is taking place in Russia right now, remember Russia has a context, and that is it is itself chafing from the recent sanctions, which actually eliminated it from the use of SWIFT system of financial transactions. So it wants to have an alternative system. But all other countries, including China, might be a little circumspect when it comes to these changes. Remember that everybody thinks that now the world order is going to shift in certain way. Some say north-south confrontation, some say a bipolar world, some say multipolar. But the fact is, nobody knows the exact nature of the coming order because every country is so interdependent on each other. And when you talk about Russia, whatever pain it is facing right now, it might go away tomorrow. So the timing is also puzzling because in 15 days there's going to be an election. And if Donald Trump were to win, Putin is going to be very happy. So why undercut a system that can eventually help you? And my idea is that while they will keep on talking about alternative system, that might actually come, but de-dollarization, especially creating a new currency and perhaps using something like Bitcoin, I think that is a far cry. We are still in a world that is created with dollars, and dollar doesn't seem to be going away very soon.
Right,
Sana.
thank you for that. Yes, Faisal.
Yeah, Sana, when we talk about BRICS is one of the most important forums of the world, and especially when we talk about global development and security, this is being the highlight of the BRICS this year. And the second highlight, which of course we have been listening to the echoes around about Pakistan becoming one of the members of the BRICS, and we know now that China is favoring it, and astonishingly, India is favoring it as well in the current circumstances. So at this hour when in the West there is a war, Ukraine crisis going on, I believe that BRICS is going to be very important related to that. Middle East crisis and the Western world's crisis, Ukrainian crisis, they affect the whole world, and I think there should be a resolve to it, and BRICS is going to be pivotal when it comes to solving all of these issues.
Right, and in terms of Pakistan's involvement, what aspects then will there be in terms of Pakistan representation different from the SCO in this summit?
Yeah, BRICS is a different forum, and of course when we talk about development, Pakistan is already part of China's CPEC and Pakistan China, the corridor we always highlight. This is, of course, very important, and it is going to be very important for the BRICS states as well, because when we talk about economic transactions between all of the countries, it will be playing a pivotal role. So
Right.
to me, I think Pakistan becoming part in the future, it will be very important, not only for Pakistan, but for the BRICS as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Faisal, and thank you for joining us in the debate. As always, of course, it remains to be seen what role Pakistan can play on the larger global arena, but we, of course, hope to see more regional connectivity as part of course, the very important geopolitical position that Pakistan holds, and, of course, in terms of engagements with different countries around the world, and, of course, in terms of also matters at home, which we'll be here to talk about. But that's the end of the show today. We'll now see you tomorrow.